We have Brett Buchanan as our moderator or host of Crescent Moon Construction, and he'll be hosting this panel featuring a discussion about how traditional builders can transition into natural building and to start using natural elements in their building process. Brett has over 25 years of experience in residential construction and is very passionate about alternative building modalities. So please welcome our natural building panel.
All right, everybody can hear me? All right, guys, welcome, guys. Appreciate having you guys on. So this is the natural building panel, and I could read off bios about each one of you, but it might be a little boring and outdated, so I'm going to give the mic to each one of you. So tell us a little bit about how you guys got here, what you guys have been doing with your life, and what led you down this path of natural building.
I'm Lloyd Kahn. I started out building my own house because I couldn't find a place to buy that was in my price range. But anyway, I started building in 1960 in Mill Valley, California, and kind of got in over my head with architectural plans that were. But anyway, the thing that I learned then was if you don't know what to do, start, and you'll figure it out as you go along. Anyway, I got into dome building, gave up on domes, and published the book Shelter in 1973. And since then, I've published about 15 books on building.
I'm Adam Fries. My company's Sun Peak Builders. I live here in Crestone. I started building in 2003. The first place I built was an off-grid straw bale cabin for my family and I. And so then I started, had a real interest in straw bales. Started building straw bales in the Durango, Colorado area with Tim here, and so that was where my natural building path started. Over the years, I'll do both. I build conventional as well. So I really, when I'm really at most home, I'm building alternative, and the challenges of the alternative building materials, what they give you, they're not produced in a laboratory for Dow Chemical, so you have to have that flexibility in your whole approach, and I like that about it, the creative aspect of that approach to building. Recently, I've built Hobbit Home, Earthen Home. I'm working on a compressed earth block house now, and so, but yeah, I have a love of building, and so I have a strong perspective, in my opinion. The natural building actually makes me a better conventional builder because of the problem solving you have to do with it. And so, anyway, that's a little about me.
I'm Tim White. I'm president of a company called Texas Healthy Homes. Calm down, Colorado. All right? I lived for 20 years in Southwest Colorado. Started natural building in the 90s down there in an organization called Heartwood Co-Housing. I don't know if you're familiar with down in Bayfield. They've got a bunch of natural building systems down there, and then ended up moving to Mancos, Colorado, and starting my own company specializing in straw bale, clay, and lime plasters is really what my hobby is, or my interest. And so we've been working with lime and pozzolan reactions with my company for 20 years now, and we're now taking that technology into the hemp lime sector and doing a lot more education around natural building materials. And we've always focused on, since I've ever got into it, is exterior lime plaster systems, clay interior finishes, and we only do adobe floors inside of all of our buildings. So our Hondo project, we did 2,400 square feet of adobe floor. So we look at a project and we look at thousands of square feet of earthen material, and we're like, that's not a problem. When you get to looking at the carbon footprint, and this is the thing for the conventional builders looking at it, and you're looking at the carbon footprint of building materials, when you replace 8,000 pounds of reinforced concrete and steel with an adobe floor, you immediately got rid of about 7 million British thermal units of energy that you did not need in that house. Okay, and so that's what really this is all about, is how do we increase our efficiency of our carbon our building. At the same time, how do we decrease some of the carbon footprint of the modern construction materials? And what we found over time doing it is that we also got rid of all the toxins in the built environment, and we didn't have to support the corporations. The last 3 hemp houses that we've built, there's no drywall, no paint, no caulk in the whole house. So it's no longer, oh, that would be great. Texas Healthy Homes, we've done it. And the reason we did it is so that now the architects and engineers have to look at it and say, they did it, we need to go in this direction.
Hey everyone, I'm Aircrete Harry. I have a YouTube channel called Aircrete Harry, and I've mostly done experiments making Portland cement aircrete. Now, I've been into building domes since 2016. Like many on this panel, it's the same story. I was looking to build a home. Everything was very expensive with the traditional methods, and I just started looking at alternatives. I looked at a lot of natural building methods, and what I found for me at the time was I had to do all the work solo as far as I knew. I was moving from New York City to Colorado, and I had to figure out how do I do everything myself in a timely manner. So the domes worked best for me. So I make these domes using tie-back house wrap, and I sewed them into a dome shape. I cut them into a gore, which is a triangular shape. And then I just sewed them up, mount it to the ground, inflate it with a bouncy house blower, and I have a perfect form that I then spray with cement. And so it's a very quick and easy way to build, really inexpensive. And I tell people who want to build natural, who are in a situation like myself, this can be done in 2 weeks. You can build, we're building a 30-foot dome right now, and it's almost finished. It's $12,000 in cement. And I say, if you're going to take the time to build your dream home, and what these fellas build are absolute beauties, especially rammed earth. I'm looking forward to making my own hybrid rammed earth and using the air foam to make my roof because it's so much quicker for me. So I developed a system of building where one person can build by themselves in 2 weeks a structure. And I use different cements mixed with either paper, styrofoam, or just shaving cream foam, Aircrete, for making an insulative material. And so that's been working really good. So it's a wonderful, quick way to make a really beautiful structure to live in. But it's perfect if you're doing what I did, moving off grid. You have nothing. You could build a structure that's wind resistant, fireproof. You know, you could lock up your tools in it to keep it safe while you're building your dream home that might take you much longer. And so I'm up here because the airforms I make and the system I've been developing and working on, it's really quick and inexpensive, and anybody can do it in no time. And it's very important to have a place to live because I've moved to Colorado, lived in an RV, and that was a nightmare living in an RV. And so I had to rapidly build my dome, which I did in 2 weeks, and we're still living in that dome 5 years later in Colorado. So it's been working out great. But anyway, that's it. I'm Aircrete Harry. I'll catch you guys later.
Come on, give it up for Harry. Guys, this man did what I wanted to do as a young person, which was just save up a bunch of money and go build cool frickin' stuff, to be politically polite. I'm so excited to watch what you're doing every time he posts a video. He's been posting for years, and essentially it's been like a backyard story of like Harry just telling it as it is. Like, yeah, I did this, and I used a bouncy castle blow-up machine for it, and I'm cutting the tie back, and everyone's like, dude, what is this guy talking about? And then years later now, yeah, 30-foot dome, easy, done, bam. Like, you called me the other day, and we just had a little chat while you were standing there and they're spraying, you know? And I really was at first turned off because in the pamphlet that introduced me, they pulled a bio that I made for myself more from my art background. And it didn't really say much, actually, about what I'm doing in Crestone and how my life is now. But I was obsessed with Earthship building, and went to the Earthship Academy in Taos, and I created a book when I graduated the academy called Earthship 101, a beginner's guide. And because it was in my bio, I had to let you guys know what this was about. And what it was really about was me wanting to create a paper buildable model of an Earthship so that people could really understand what they were looking at. So I made a set of instructions and a die-cut paper model, and you put together a little 900 square foot Earthship model. And as per tradition, because it is the Crestone Energy Fair once again, 2024, we're only getting older. Aircrete Harry finally made it out. I wanted to give you this, my friend.
Cool, my first Earthship.
You can build it in 30 minutes.
That's faster than my dome.
So do I get this dome inflatable? No, I'm just really glad that I could be here. And I appreciate, Brett, you being open to having me here on the panel. I was moderating these panels the last 2 years. I took a step back this year, and I am so blessed and grateful to have these new faces who I wouldn't have met otherwise and to be a part of this discussion. Thanks again for coming out, because I have been waiting to meet you. If you guys want to see a really cool YouTube channel, go check out Aircrete Harry. And if you want to see the adventures of Eric and Pops, what we've done here in Crestone, and our friends who built some incredible houses, one of which is on the cover of the Crestone Energy Fair flyer and booklets for this year, Matt Evers and Goldie. Give it up for Matt Evers and Goldie. We got Pete, we got Tom, so many faces in the house that have done incredible work in this community, but now it's time to relinquish the mic to the masters.
All right. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I have a terminology question for all of you. You know, we hear a lot about green, we hear a lot about alternative, we hear a lot about natural, conventional, even conscious building, but how do you guys think about terminology? What do you guys, I mean, how would, Lloyd, for you, what would you call your style of building?
Well, in the 70s, we were trying to, the phrase green building and natural building came later. We were just doing it because we wanted to save materials and be ecologically responsible. So what was the question?
What would you call your style of building?
My style of building after a lot of different permutations has gotten around to stud frame building, but that's just me. And I haven't kept up with all the materials that I saw on the tour this morning. I mean, there's so much going on around here that, I mean, I'm out of the past really. And when I talk later on today, I'll just go through my trip through building all these years. But mainly what I've done is go around and interview builders and take pictures for about 50 years. And I'm just thrilled to see what's going on around here. I don't think there's any place else in the world where there's this much happening. And it seems to be on materials. It seems to be the main thing seems to be materials. So. But it occurred to me one time that we didn't call it natural building or green building back in the 60s. We just were trying to do things as best as possible.
My style of building, yeah. I would say, well, for one, the terminology in green building and sustainable building, it's so overused. And so I think it's, you know, my approach to building, it's the energy you put into it. Each project has a life of its own, no matter what building material you use. For example, in a number of straw bales in the Durango area, I'd take a potential client, take them through the straw bale, and they're like, well, this building material isn't exactly for me, but I want it to feel exactly like that did when I walked in there. That was unbelievable. I've never felt anything like that. I'm like, that's the material you're feeling. That's the whole energy body of the project that was put in there. It's meaningful that, the subcontractors and the crews that are working there, how your whole attitude is about the approach of it. And so, but my style of building, it's even with a conventional building, if the details are right, the architecture is right, super efficient. You can make a super efficient conventional building. And so, the embodied energy that home consumes after the life of the building, after it's built, is significant. It's more than the building materials going into it. And so, when I approach it, I want to use as many low embodied energy materials as possible. Cost comes into it. Cost can become a factor. If you hire a general contractor and say, you're responsible this is a turnkey, from very start to finish, and I'm gonna hold you responsible for a warranty for this project, that's a whole different mentality. I'm probably going off on a tangent here, but that's a whole different mentality than how few materials can I use, how many natural materials can I use. If it cracks, if the plaster cracks, that's okay, because I'll go repair it. Well, it's the relationship, the approach that the builder and the client has in general. I don't know if I'm making sense and where I'm going with that, but it's super important, and that comes into the whole energy of a project and what the expectation is of a client and a builder, what the expectations of each other are. And so, anyway, I don't know. There you go there.
That's great, Adam. That's great. Brett, thanks for putting that bamboo back underneath my fingernail hair. I've been in this for a long time, and I remember when green building came along, and during that time I was vice president of an organization called the Southwest Natural Builders Guild, and there were some of us that we need to separate ourselves from green building as natural building. Our green building and LEED programs around energy efficiency will take over. Well, fast forward 20-some years later, and that is what's happened. When I talk to people in Austin, Texas, they're like, oh, you're a green builder, you build with natural materials. And I was like, well, green building is not necessarily natural materials. And so in another MBuild Masterminds organization that I'm an instructor, we had a guest architect come in, and she was an older lady, and she had her architect degree, and she saw a green building, and she's like, I know I can do better. So she went out and did a COB workshop and really fell in love with natural building. And she put it best. As her viewing herself as a green builder, she found that she needed to step up to natural building. And so I've always been looking how do I compare that? And so green was always supposed to be a beginning for us to create a conversation. And they always said at the very beginning, this is just the first step. There's going to be another step. Well, now we're to that next step of stepping up to natural building. At Texas Healthy Homes, a lot of people are like, what your company does is green building. And we're like, we're so green, we're actually blue. Because we're looking at the whole gamut, and sustainability, green building, it's really not moving the needle. In this conference I attended up in Oregon around the industrial hemp aspect of it, we were finding that sustainability wasn't moving the dial, green wasn't moving the dial to move us in a more holistic way or lowering our carbon footprint, and that really what we're doing is we're creating healthy spaces and healthy homes with healthy materials. Nobody wants a tumor. Nobody wants their kids to have asthma, and so we're starting to gain the consciousness in society to be able to look at the different materials. So I really view the dial of what we do and our systems approach as we are actually Texas Healthy Homes. We're making a healthy environment. And once you make that healthy environment with natural materials, you start to change the way people feel about themselves. You actually start to change society, and that's really where we need to go. So that's how I view what we do.
So I would say my style of building would be more of a hybrid, because I've taken a bunch of different workshops. I've done tons of research, and after experiencing building, I've done maybe 8 domes to this date. My practices have changed, and incorporating more natural materials, especially rammed earth walls, is something I'm really going to be doing more in the future. So the future domes will have rammed earth walls, probably up to 6 feet high. And then it'll have my traditional cement roof for the dome portion. But something else I'm looking to do to get into more natural materials, and I've learned today at this show from the geopolymer guys that some of their mixes are using 80% aggregate and only 20% of the geopolymer cement. So I think this is really incredible. I'm looking to do some experimenting myself. I recently got my own samples to play with, the geopolymer side of things. But that's a natural cement. It's one of the strongest, has a lot of benefits. One of the ones I like most is that it's waterproof, and because that makes a big difference. And this is why I'm looking to really incorporate that. Now, another thing that was mentioned is energy. I'm big into energy as well. I make torus coils, right, which are energetic. But one thing I've been learning a lot, and mainly from Dan Winter, you can look him up if you're not familiar, he talks about a lot of biogeometry and about sacred spaces and how to build these. And so one easy way for me is an egg shape. An egg-shaped structure energetically is very positive for the human body because there's a push-pull effect having that geometry of an egg. And so I have some airforms made in the shape of an egg, and I have future designs which will be egg-shaped homes, two-story homes made as an egg, and incorporating a lot of natural earth floors because energetically, earthing is probably one of the most important things we could be doing. And to have a natural earth floor that you live on every day and you can be barefoot is an incredible thing to help you energetically. And there's a lot that goes into this. That's also why my structures I'm building have no metal in them, because from, again, the research that I've studied, having any metal in the structure changes the energetic aspect of the home, especially when you're dealing with the geometries I am, spheres and these egg shapes. But I'm definitely hybrid because I like to incorporate the earth aspect. And then for myself, since it's easiest to spray cement onto an air form that's very inexpensive to make, it just works out for me, and it's a great system. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about the rammed earth because those are just such beautiful structures. And the structures you showed me, I don't know what you're going to share today, but Eric's doing some incredible work too with his designs.
Yeah, I feel like the scale, well, yeah. If this was like a scale, respectfully, I'm just saying you did mention that you're coming from old school background, and that as we're going this direction, I'm kind of the youngest, perhaps. I'm not sure. But for me, growing up in school, there was this push. Part of why I became who I am today is because there were these people who wanted to go into the New York public school system where I grew up upstate and push this paradigm of, in a way it felt Californian. It was a lot of like Al Gore, The Inconvenient Truth, and basically making it feel like I was really shitty for being born and that the world is being handed to me and it's about to explode and everything and all the decisions that all the people before you made were awful and that nobody knows how to handle the waterways and they don't know how to build your houses without them being full of toxins. And so it's felt pretty darn awful to contemplate the thing that you're asking me. And now the thing that I'll be the devil's advocate to bring up, and I don't want to say anything stupid here, but the panel that was just before us was about energy. And so if I'm going to mention anything, I'm going to talk about electrification and the difference between the envelope being a breathable envelope or a sealed envelope and having heat recovery ventilation systems versus electrified houses. Because the push for electrification, that's the thing that has been really hot. We've been talking about this, and we talked about it last time too. It's not just having metal in your structure. It's not just having adobe underneath your feet. It's not just having a green roof. It's not just trying everything and then finally saying, you know what, wood framing is great and it can be sustainable. It's about a new push to have electrified vehicles that have a battery in them that connect to your home system, which also has batteries, which is also connected to the grid-tie system in a microgrid, and then you have your solar panels, and then you have your home automation, and then you have electrical wires running behind your bed in your wall, at night while you're sleeping, right? These are some of the factors that, if we're talking about definition of the space, the way that we think and the consciousness that we bring when we build something that we call whatever, blue, green, natural, eco, off-grid, sustainable, self-sustainable, homestead, permaculture, whatever all these words are, it's the consciousness that's put into the design. Because even if I buy a house and I have it plonked right here, I want that design to be the best possible thought through thing for the site-specific conditions and conditions of all kinds, financial included. Even if the house comes from the outside, if it's in a template form like a plan, if it's something that you buy that you inflate, no matter what, it's about the actual thought that goes through the site-specific conditions, economic conditions, environmental conditions, personal climate conditions, all of these conditions. And the electrification thing, in my mind, it's the hot topic right now, because you've got the people who are saying, don't do a plywood wrapped box that's sealed. Then other people saying, with an electrified sealed box, airtight envelope versus something that breathes. Something that has maybe passive ventilation or passive solar or what have you. But then it becomes a living organism. These buildings are not comparable. Living organism, passive solar, passive ventilation systems require that you watch throughout the day as the sun moves throughout the building and the angle and where you need to close a window, open a window, put a blind down. The water system is very specific. If you dump your water into your gray water cell and it's recharging your botanical bed, year-round indoor botanical bed, you're not going to pour toxins down that drain. It's not even, there is no word for it. You can only be in these buildings and experience them. And that's a reason to go on the home tours tomorrow, for sure, because my dad and I say every time we come up to Crestone, you literally cannot describe it when you're in a building like that. And people all the time do the same thing. Walk in, wow, this feels amazing. I'm connected to the ground, and it's not just a shitty box with no windows, and oh man, the sun feels good. Are these plants? Boy, the air's fresh. Now, can I get this, but like, completely different with the big screen TV and the jacuzzi and the built-in sauna, please? Which, the jacuzzi and the sauna are a nice thing too, but it's the crux of the conversation about the electrification thing, and that's more so me wanting to toss that in the middle for someone else to pick up, because my perspective on electrification is very different from having basically grown up in the regime that wants that anyway. I dreamed of having an electrical car I could plug into my Earthship, roll up into my garage. It's like a ferro cement vault with my electrical car plug in. Am I crazy?
All right, guys, thank you. Okay, so next question that I guess this is the whole impetus of the discussion I wanted to have with all of you today, is we've been talking about, last year Pete and Matt talked about if the only thing you can do is just do passive solar. And there's a lot of different natural things and modalities that we can do with our houses. But the question I have, because I've been a conventional builder my entire life, what is the simplest way for a conventional builder to transition into natural building? And I've talked to Tim about this, and it's not an easy conversation, but if you guys could give me just a little piece of information about what can builders do to get closer to natural building. And there's probably no easy answer, at least not in Tim's eyes.
Go to the demo site at this event and talk to everybody here.
But even with Lloyd, you are an amazing guy. What you have done with reclaimed wood and reusing wood and salvaging wood, I think is just amazing. So even from that perspective, what are things that conventional builders can do to go more conscious building or more eco building or more natural building?
Well, I just sold my publishing company this year, and I may do 1 or 2 books a year, but I've learned so much stuff in the last 24 hours, and I sort of thought, well, that's maybe the end of the line with building books, but I almost see another book available coming on stuff that you guys are talking about here and things that I see around Crestone on not just materials but on energy And another thing that sort of not really directly related to this question, but one of the things that I always looked for in a home was how it felt. And the feeling that I got in when I visited the Steens, Bill and Athena Steen, who wrote the Straw Bale book, was just how great it felt. It was just something you can't quantify. There's no science that's going to tell you why it feels good. The Steens, by the way, got into straw bale building because of a photo in our 1973 book Shelter of a barn in Nebraska built out of straw bales. But anyway, I'm very excited by what I see going on. But I'm not a builder like all these guys are. I mean, I've built 3 or 4 homes, but I've never really worked that much, well, a little bit as a builder. But I'm learning more stuff than I'm going to put out here.
So for a conventional builder wanting to transition to more natural building, it's definitely about a desire and a commitment, because at the end of the day, it's harder. You have to have more patience. You have to be patient with materials. You have to be patient with subcontractors, for example, electricians and plumbers, that they're used to going through a conventional house, drill all their holes out, run their lines, and they have a system. That's what they do, right? So now you're asking them to do that in a compressed earth block house, or a straw bale house, or an ICF house. And so there's definitely a level of patience and a desire to be creative that it takes for a builder. A process, if you're doing it for clients, that it's an education process for yourself and the clients. There's a lot of hand-holding. And so it's a desire to want to be creative, to thrive in that creativity. Because if you're good at natural building, that's being creative and a good problem solver is essential. So that's right, Tim? And so that would be my answer for wanting to make that transition. Yeah.
I would say that there's a whole gamut across there, coming from conventional to being knee-deep in it. When you get to making that transition to being knee-deep in straw bale, light straw clay, hempcrete, ferrous cement, Aircrete, all of those things, it's like, dude, it's terrifying. Okay? It can be terrifying, and that's okay. How are some baby steps? Texas Healthy Homes this last year, we've been from coast to coast and sponsoring events in Chicago, really getting out there in the world and dealing with conventional builders that are like, wow, I see the market developing, but I'm terrified because now I got to start this whole learning curve, and is it going to tank my company? It can definitely tank your company, okay, if you do something wrong. So I've started to approach the conventional builders that I've dealt with that are really wanting to go to hempcrete, but they're afraid, or they want to go in different directions, but they want to incorporate some sort of natural material into their stick frame system. There's a couple of companies that are making a hemp bat insulation. So you can go from a fiberglass or insulation to a hemp insulation, do drywall, and you can do clay plasters. American Clays down in New Mexico, they got a great product. It's American made. You can put that over drywall. You can put that over latex painted drywall. So as a conventional builder going forward, and you want to move in a more natural direction, a low-hanging fruit that has very little risk in your system approach would be moving to a hemp insulation that's a bat that's beautiful to work with. No itch. My crew, when we had it on our project, they were taking naps at lunch on top of it. They were like, oh, I'm going to throw some out, and they'd throw a couple sheets of it in, and we'd take a nap, and we were throwing at each other. And then just going to a clay plaster on the inside, which means that you get rid of the latex paint. You don't get rid of the drywall, but you get rid of the latex paint. You get rid of the caulk. And so you start to reduce the products that have VOCs in them inside of the building envelope, is really what you want to be looking for. And then when you're ready to go, full Monty and jump into the dang thing, I'm good friends with Bill and Athena Steen since the 90s, We communicate a couple of times every year on what they're doing and what we're doing and what we're finding. And Bill and Athena are super excited with what I've been doing and a couple of other natural builders, because they're like, you guys come down and you take our classes, but you are going out into the world and you're building houses with it. And a lot of the people they have that come to their classes are just looking at it and learning it and then not really applying it into the building system. So if you're going to go full in, be ready to go to different workshops, different natural building sort of conferences. And you're going to have to pick and choose, because a lot of those are geared towards the do-it-yourselfer, and there's very few of them out there that are geared towards the professional builder that wants to build multiple houses. And so a lot of the stuff that we do at Texas Healthy Homes and on our trainings are more like 4 or 5 day training programs on the different materials, because you need that to get the experience of working with the material that you really don't get just in 2 days. And so there's baby steps, and then when you're ready to go all in, give me a call. We're here to help.
So I think the first thing would be being inspired to want to do it by visiting different homes, different style builds. Like you mentioned, going to different workshops is where I started. I took a bunch of workshops before I settled on what I wanted to do. And I think that's the biggest one. They need to be inspired. So when you go to these structures, you go inside, like we're saying, you can feel the energy. You just feel something's different. And that's the beginning. And then it's a matter of what style you want to go. There's a lot of natural earth styles of building you can do that are all beautiful, especially if this is just for yourself. If you're starting a business, that's another story. You need to, visit commercial joints, commercial companies, and see how they're doing it. But for everyone looking to build themselves, to transition, it's just a matter of being inspired. That's number one for me, and the workshops. After that, doing a small model, because that's where I started. I built an 8-foot dome for my first prototype to get my hands wet. So if you're already in the building industry and you're looking to transition, start by building a small shed. That's the best way I can say. And then you, just like this build project here, you can do 4 different walls and try getting your hands, dirty with each method. Rammed earth, aircrete, cob, whatever style you're going with. Just build yourself a small place and do each style, because nothing is going to be better than actually getting your hands dirty, because it might be too dirty and be like, all right, I don't want to do it this way. It's too dirty for me. Let me do something a little cleaner. But that would be my suggestion.
Dirty and clean. Which way do you go? Owner, builder, or pro? I don't know. But what I'd say is that there's, once again, a spectrum. Are you interested as an owner builder in how to transition into more from conventional, or are you already a freak and you're basically just like have always wanted to build a cob house? I think that right now the people who I've worked with in the space are mostly interested in really making everything as accessible as possible. I think that's one thing that no matter whether you're a pro or whether you're an owner builder or whether you're an unconventional builder like myself, I visit conventional job sites and check out systems that $1 million houses are made out of that are replicated on mass scale, modular units, hobbit houses, you name it. Earthships are no longer the thing that you have to make out of pound tires. They are something that you can order and have delivered and assembled on site and buried. And when you talk to people like this who are doing these jobs, they're like, dude, this rich guy just wanted a hobbit house. Like, can you tell me what the hell I'm supposed to do to finish this thing off? Because the company says one thing and like you have all this other experience. And I'm like, what is the value exchange between the two? How do we bridge? And the bridge was, well, hey, they want you to buy a gigantic amount of styrofoam to insulate this thing. You're going to have to get a table with a hot knife, basically, which is made of a wire that gets hot, and then you cut the foam. 16-inch thick XPS, gigantic blocks. And they were just going to stack them alongside this thing to bury it. And with earthships, the way that we're doing it, we have two pieces of rigid insulation that is staggered and buried in the berm to create a thermal break from the frost line and to create the thermal wrap and the battery. So like significantly less foam, significantly less caustic, unrecyclable, heinous material, you know what I mean? And he was asking about Aircrete. And I would not normally go through the effort to really try to give this man a solution. But because he was like, look, I'm doing the math, and according to this, like Aircrete is going to be so much less expensive and detrimental, and we can save materials and all this. And I was like, well, this is amazing because he's got an incredible home system that he's come up with here. He's working at a much higher level, doing massive developments, 100 units, but he still values the input of someone who's doing an alternative thing. And he's saying, you know, I'm looking on YouTube as well. And he said, I've seen this stuff on YouTube, but can you explain it to me so that I can understand it to use it in this system? And me being willing to sit down and have the conversation was the entire crux of the decision for him. He said, look, this is going to cost a significant amount of money. I don't want to use styrofoam. These builders, a lot of times, don't want to do something they're uncomfortable with, but there's pressure, there's budget, there's time factors, there's client pressures, there's all these different things. And so I really think that education, because Off-Grid Guru is an education company where we have sponsored the Energy Fair for many years, filming the building demos, it's my life passion to share these things with everybody. And you know, some of the people who've mentored me and that have given me a chance and supported me in my career are over by the builders area at the Off-Grid Guru booth. And they have created some really down-to-earth information for people at any level, whether it's someone who's in a position of power that is potentially looking at some codes and in a position to make a decision to okay or not okay a structure. There is a lot of resources for people at that level. At the highest level, if you want to be able to understand the engineering, understand the materials, understand what we're doing, we have it. And it's not a situation of this is not to code. Brett and I explained last time we were up at the panel, we build things to code. We know about safety. We are trying to build healthy, feel-good homes here. And so at the highest level, yes, we can produce the data and the research. In the middle, go on YouTube. Look at what everyone's doing because there is validity in every single thing. You know, and it is sometimes hard to talk to somebody who's coming from the conventional background, net zero, LEED certified. LEED does not even touch the buildings that most of us are creating. It's just a joke. And I was raised to fill out my little LEED check form, you know? It was like we were over there in middle school auditing the botanical garden in New York City, and we had the LEED forms with us, and we're like, oh, well, you got plastic cups in your dining area. That's not, you know, good, and you have this plastic water dispenser and all these things, and we were nitpicking, but the truth is that the designers, the architects came in with their idea. The reality is a completely different situation. The architects oftentimes are designing it from home from a computer without having ever been on site. You know, it's a totally different thing to actually go and walk the site you're going to build on, preferably many times, preferably observe it for several seasons. Go through an entire phase of survey in which you do nothing. Analyze everything in which that you've learned. Go back to survey because you realized through analysis that there was a dead spot there and you don't know this, or why would I choose that material? Back and forth, more data. Think about it, more data, and then finally design. Finally, after looking at all the data, thinking about the factors, where is the rain, where is the sun, where are the trees, where is the view, what is the ground like, what are these materials like, why do I want this? Hempcrete because it needs to be fireproof in this area with the trees. It's a good reason to build with hempcrete in this area. And then after that, once you've designed it, you implement, you build it, then maintain. Yes, it's okay to have a wall with earth and plaster on it. Have a little party with your friends and teach them how to repair a adobe wall when it gets a little crack in it after some years. Your family intergenerationally will be learning these skills and carrying on the tradition of building with the materials that humans have built with for all of time. You know, the Mojave Center is an amazing example of that because it's a family lineage. And a lot of times you'll find that when the parents are showing to the kids that you can build your own home and allowing them the agency to build with them, you have this incredible empowering effect that inspires people. And you said it yourself, like inspiring someone so that they know that they don't have to get every single material they build their house out of from Home Depot is a really powerful thing, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add one thing there?
What's that?
Can I add one thing there?
Sure.
Because the transition from conventional to, you know, going full in and natural building, it can be terrifying. Okay, but one thing that I've learned in that process of being on conventional houses and something's not right, everybody's like, oh, we've got a problem. In the natural building world with natural materials, oh, we have a situation here and we can create a solution. So it's a complete different mentality of like starting out with a negative problem and already tied into the dark side to being like, oh, this is just a situation. We have everything here that we need to solve that situation to come up with a solution. So it's really a shift in mentality that takes place, right? You know, Adam?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a separate question for you. Now I'll start with Tim on this one. Here in our county, we don't have building codes. Well, we have electrical and plumbing. And every 3 years, the state comes back and wants us to implement building codes. And there's always a loophole. We're always trying to work with the county to try to figure it out. But what can we do to protect our way of building in this county? Because there's not that many counties in the state that have this. I think 2 years ago, there were 6 counties in the state that had no building codes. And I believe 3 or 4 of them adopted codes. And our county is going to be pushing this down our throat next year or the following year. So, yeah.
It's
It's every 3 years. And what they want to push is they want to push probably the 2021 energy codes, which require electrification across the board to a certain degree. So what can we do as builders, as natural builders? What can we do here in this county to protect our way of building?
Well, you know, it never hurts to pray. And also the building codes that are out there and that they're going to want to adopt, and they're pushed down our throats for health and safety. Okay, so they're mainly going to be looking at structural load and tie down is their main thing on buildings. And then they want to make sure there's an R value. All the natural materials that are out there, there is testing out there on all of them around R value, from straw bale to hempcrete to light straw clay, adobe, and the whole 9 yards, you know, and with what you're doing with the Aircrete, you know, so they want an insulation value. And then when it comes to the natural materials and the historic lime plasters, they really don't care what you do on the inside as a wall finish inside of your house, okay? So trying to get that code or those inspectors to realize that this is a historic monolithic wall system, okay? So it needs to fit into those historic sort of parameters. And when you start to go to an historic 3-coat lime plaster system, I mean, I built over in La Plata County. And what we were doing over there when they adopted all the building codes is that this is an historic 3-coat lime plaster system, and it's an historic stucco, so the rules and regulations around cement stucco don't apply to it because it's an historic material. And so that's a loophole to get away from the vapor barriers and the house wraps. And at the end of the day, no matter what the code in the county is, when you go to get the permit, the only thing the permit department cares about is if there is an engineered stamp on the set of plans. Okay? So at the end of the day, it's finding the engineer with the insurance policy that creates flexibility for his or her or their insurance to be able to go with the load and everything. And I mean, you touch on a really touchy subject for me with codes, because I've been dealing with them the whole time I've been in. And inspectors that you just want to put a claw hammer in their skull sometimes, you know, to the point that we, on this one project, we had to leave as the builders when the inspector came, because that's how much he disliked anything alternative. To the point that the homeowners finally requested that that inspector never comes back to their job site because of the grief that he was creating inside of what they were wanting to do. And so there's a lot of that, of finding the different inspectors inside of the county that are more understanding about it. For me, with building codes and everything like that, they regulate the electric, they elect the plumbing. We deal with that all the time in Texas. They're going to regulate the structural, and it's all going to be for health and safety in the building. there is not one single petrochemical toxin that is in the modern built environment that is causing damage to humans that is regulated. None of them. So if this whole building code thing was about health and safety of the human occupancies, those toxins wouldn't be allowed at all in any of the building materials. Okay, that's just it. So you can see I get a little passionate about this as a building scientist. So that's what we deal with inside of what we do with our designs and everything. And I've always dealt with is like, try to find the engineer. They only care about the structural loads is what they're gonna be really harping about, and the R value, you know, and upgrading your plumbing and the whole 9 yards there, which is a long pirate ship conversation. But that is really, when it gets down to it, the most frustrating thing about it. It's like, sure, I get it. I got no problem playing with your games. But can we really get down to the elephant in the room? And the elephant in the room that nobody is talking about is the toxins in the built environment and the toxins in the natural environment. Until we get ready to have that conversation, it's going to be this, that, or the other thing.
In Mendocino County, they have something called the Owner Builder Code. And I think the way they did it is they got to the Board of Supervisors. And so that the way it works, they've loosened up on some of the things. And if you sell your house, you have to bring it up to code. But I'll say one thing about the codes. I've seen some places where there were really unsafe buildings that were built where there were no codes. And it all depends on the chief building inspector. When I moved to Marin County in the early 70s, the chief inspector was a former contractor, so he knew what he was talking about. He wasn't just a bureaucrat. In Big Sur, when I built a house, when I had something I didn't want the inspector to scrutinize too closely, I put on Jimi Hendrix record real loud, and when he was so rattled, he checked off on the thing.
I think Tim hit it right. It's about relationships, and it's about finding the right architect or engineer that has an understanding of natural building materials. There was an architect by the name of Jay Lynch in Bayfield, Colorado, when Tim and I were building in that area, and he had a passion for natural building. And if you put it in front of him, he considered it a challenge to get it through the building department with what you wanted to do. And so there are people out there like that. Relationships with building departments. It can be difficult, not always. At the end of the day, this is what the building department wants. They don't want the liability for what you're doing. So if you can pay for that stamp, they're okay with it. There it is. And so that's what I found over the year. But it's about fostering the relationships that you need to get what you want.
Yeah, let me say one thing about dealing with inspectors down in Texas. What I found is that if I got an American flag flying on my job site and a Texas flag and I got my Marine Corps flag flying, they're like, oh, right on, sir, no problem. They'll check all the boxes. The one time I didn't have that, oh my goodness, it was like up one side and down the other. So it's where you're at, and how do you literally manipulate people to feel good.
That's true.
I think it starts really at the whole science of the R value, because that whole R value is a joke. It's all on the lab. I last year spent a lot of money sending samples to be R value tested, and they're not taking into account the thermal mass of the interior, especially building with earth. It's huge. Like, for example, my dome is only 3 inches thick. And it works perfectly. It absorbs the cold at night, and during the day it's nice and cool inside. And while it's heating up, that at night the heat starts to transfer in, and that's not taken into account. Like, they might not approve the dome I'm living in R value wise, but it's perfectly safe and comfortable and everything. So let's get rid of the R value. That's already proved that it's all nonsense. But a more exciting way to get things to stay the same is to build 2 structures. One, any of your style, natural styles, because they're all fireproof. And right next to it, build a traditional stick frame with all the R value they want, and say, which one do you want to live in? Because we're going to burn it. And they'll pick the Earth ship every time.
It always comes down to that, and there is just such a paradigm right now that we live in a world where I have to think about insuring the building because of the potential of sale. We live in a world where I have to work and play by the rules of financing or private financing, but then there's still a lot that comes with it, because essentially it's like if you only have one fire exit and you can't insure your building, which you just spent years making and tons of effort, and it's like they say, no, there's only one exit out of this, so we're not going to insure it. So we've looked into insuring tiny homes, we've looked into insuring earthships. The builders that we're working with figured out this thing about if you build a buried structure and you only have that one passive solar glass face and you only have that one door, simple survival earthship studio style, you cannot then insure that. And an under contract home that was built for a client was built that way. So in Taos, we're facing a lot of the repercussions of what happens when the building department and the inspectors are initially open because of all of the pushback that Mike Reynolds and the community and all the fighting that they did to get rammed earth tires into the conventional there. And so you have a whole wave of inspectors who can go in and inspect an earthship rammed earth tires fine in Taos County. But then you have a whole nother wave of problems that comes after that. And so all these economic factors and things that we have to adhere to, those are the things that I'd like people to be more aware of when they build, because those really bite you in the ass. And if you could just know before you do some of these things, just a little tweak here and there from some of the people who've done it before you, so you don't have to bleed and sweat and cry over the decisions you make making this house, this dream house that you want. There are just these little things that really steer a little bit this way, steer a little bit that way, and there is a way through the code.
I've got one question for you guys. Keep it short on this one, but and Lloyd will probably be able to answer this one best, and maybe you too, Eric. But our county pushed it down our throats a couple of years ago to raise the square footage from, I think it was 600 to 900 square feet. And we worked with the county, found the loophole, and the loophole for the state is 150 square feet. So currently our county is 150 square feet for unconsolidated Swatch County. What is the impetus, or what is the reason behind 600 to 900 square feet? I'm just curious what your point of view is, all of you, because I've got a theory.
I don't mean to hog the mic for a second, but this is the thing that keeps me up at night. We are planning on developing our properties here that we've bought after years of research, and this 900 frickin' square foot thing has just made it so that every time I go to approach somebody with the plan, I tell them, yeah, I want to do this, this, and that, but the minimum is 900 square feet, and they go, every time. Yeah. So I've had to come up with something to go around that, and I'd rather show and tell. I'd rather do it. Yeah. But the impetus around it is pretty much what you said, Matt, is they want you to spend a lot of money. 900 square foot structures, I think the idea that someone could live in a 150 square foot tiny home is, from one standpoint, maybe unbelievable, but from another standpoint, completely valid, and should not be scrutinized and told that they cannot do that, because we've discussed affordable housing before. The reality, I think, is that a 900 square foot structure means that you mean business. You have to plan more, you have to think more, you know you're going to spend a baseline amount of money to be able to build that structure, and ultimately when they look at the plans, they want to see that this person is spending enough on what they're doing. And I mean, honestly, Lisa would be the one to rant about this. They denied her for the loans. She wanted to only borrow so much money. They said, no, you have to borrow more. She said, then I'm not going to take your loan.
There's a guy here, if you know Chelsea from the Shaved Ice Cart, her dad is here. I talked to him a few months ago, and I've heard that the comment, it wasn't about the amount of money you want to borrow. You can borrow $50,000. It has to be 600 square foot. But I'm kind of curious to you guys, what is the impetus behind 600 square feet or 900 square feet? Because the bigger house we build, the more resources we have to have, the more energy inputs we have to have. Our tax base goes higher.
You have to be able to live simply. It doesn't matter what you're doing, what you're living in. You always are having to interact with your environment in a way that you live more simply. And the more square footage that you have to fill up, the more needs, and the more, in a permaculture context, if you just take it from a permaculture context, you design it based on the needs of the system. And so the 900 square and 600 square foot, I really can't tell you. I'm just going to give you a flat out, I don't know. And I don't want to be disrespectful. And there are people here who I look to hope to have intelligent conversations with when we discuss developing our properties in the Baca together. I don't have any major gripes with the fact that we have to build bigger, except it's taken me so much longer because I've had to play my chess cards and the pieces just the right way to get enough money to be able to even start. Because the reality is that tiny living, which you have a lot more experience than I do in, so I'll segue that to you, Lloyd. Tiny living.
Something to, I don't know if it's the same here, but where I'm from, the building inspector and the health department, which manages septic systems, they don't get paid by the county, they get paid by fees. And so the higher they can make their fees, the more income they have for their health plans and pensions. And so that's one thing. So like where I live, you have to have a sprinkler in every home, which is absurd. You know, $30,000, $40,000 for a sprinkler system, which makes a lot of sense in a restaurant where they've got grease fires. So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind. Septic systems where I am from are $70,000, $80,000 now. And I think it's all because, you know, bureaucrats beget more bureaucracy. And so you just have to keep that in mind. And I don't know if it's the same here. I don't know if your building inspector gets paid by the county or if he gets paid by fees. But one of the other thing about a 900 square foot place is, it occurs to me, what about building a 900 square foot place and then having other buildings that are not maybe subject to code, or maybe you're not saying you're going to be living in them? I don't know if inspectors go around tagging people, but they don't where I live, which is a very expensive area. It's only if your neighbors turn you in as you've got a problem. And so there's, I don't know, I can't count the number of illegal situations in my little town that are going, the county isn't coming in on them because I think for one thing, they don't want all the feedback about, affordable housing.
The only thing that can give a solution, what Sean King said on the panel before to this, like if I'm trying to just not think about the impetus or what the implications are, the consequences or anything like that, but I just think about the solution, it would just be exactly what Sean already said, incremental building. Because that is an intelligent design. That's it. Just incremental building because it's an intelligent design for its own sake. You need to have somewhere where you can have sewage management on site immediately, so they want you to have a porta-john. You need to be able to house yourself, shield from the elements, safe sewage treatment, clean water, shelter, power. The very base things need to be figured out in a way such in this community, and I think that there is a path forward for that. I think the 900 square foot thing just makes you have to strategize a little bit more and understand the needs of your site and your conditions and the incremental building process. We have an amazing guide over at the Off-Grid Guru booth that steps you through literally every single step from start to finish of a build, from, like I said, survey all the way to implementation and maintenance. So there is some literature available if people are interested, because people who've been doing this for 30, 40 years have put everything that they learned into these books so that you can read through it and checklist, and they'll ask you the questions and you can see what you need engineering wise, what to do when you first get on your site and all these other things. But I'm gonna try to make it my, I don't like the fact that I have to do it, and I've told you this before, because I always want to just be building with the best materials possible, but I definitely know that if I were to build out here, and I know the way the elements are out here, you got to have something on site fast that you can house yourself with or provide some kind of structure. There's just no question about that. Don't live in a tent and try to do it that way. I've watched people break themselves like that. You got to have something that you can live in, at least bare minimum structure.
Okay, so we'll finish with these three, then I have one last question, and then we'll open it up to Q&A.
So I live in a 400 square foot space, and I think 600 is just fine for a family. I don't see any reason why they raised it to 900. It really doesn't make any sense. There's zero reason for it. You can live beautifully in a 600 square foot. It wouldn't cost much. If you were building my style, it would cost you approximately $10,000 to build. And so it's nothing. We're building a 30-footer right now. It's 12,000, all finished with the structure and installation and everything. Nothing
Hey,
interior.
Hold on. So you're building a 30-foot dome for $12,000 finished?
Structure. The structure is finished. Not in, yeah, the shell, the dome shell. 4 tapering down to 2 inches thick in the concrete. And then the installation is the Epic cement mix, which is going to go on about 8 inches thick. And that's 12,000 for that.
Good job. That's phenomenal.
Thank you.
When you talk about square footage and being developed by the county as a code system of 900 square feet, it feels like you're becoming an HOA. I mean, because that's what HOAs have for regulations on the size of house you can build in a development. I would say that in my experience, it gets down to tax base and what they can charge for increase in taxes for that living space, and resaleable value for county income down the future. You know, a 900 square foot house is more resaleable to more people than a 200 square foot tiny house, you know. And so that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, it has to do with money, the fact that they have minimums. You know, but we live here in Crestone in our HOA. It's pretty liberal on what they consider habitable square feet. Just because, for example, you can have a loft. It's really a storage loft. It's not, it's not the formula where it's, at least it has to be 5 feet before your head hits the, of height from the finished floor to the ceiling. So it's pretty liberal in that way. So and I've been in jurisdictions, even in a more strict jurisdiction like Durango, Colorado, the engineer was pretty liberal on what they considered habitable space. So there are other ways to circumvent the 900 square foot minimum where you're really not building 900 square feet. So yeah, again, it's relationships in that way, but it has to do with money, is why it's 900.
So is that conditioned space, or could you include a outdoor porch as part of that 900 square feet, would be my question on it. Yeah, is it your rooftop deck? Is it your rooftop,
I believe it's conditioned space.
Conditioned space, okay.
So here's the last question. This is kind of a side shoot, but with trying to protect our natural building, what's your opinion on guilds or a natural building alliance? Guilds? Guild?
Should we start a guild?
And what are some lessons we can learn from the past on that about how to create some sort of alliance in our county to preserve this way of building?
Associations or guilds are always they're strong if you're organized and you can go to the county and say, or the municipality and say, how about we present these codes to you, or these, not codes, but these guidelines to you. The reality is the folks in the county, especially here and everywhere, they're overworked. They don't have time to develop a lot of things that are of interest to us. And so, you talk about short-term rentals. They haven't developed guidelines. It's because they don't have time to develop guidelines. So it's no different than in our county with building. If we were to have a guild or an association get together and propose guidelines, right, a balanced guidelines, they would be receptive, one would think. Anyway.
Guilds, we tried it down in Southwest Colorado with the Southwest Colorado Natural Builders Guild, and our mission statement was, in the spirit of camaraderie, we were going to work together for the betterment of everybody. And well, that's all great and fine and dandy if everybody's on board. A lot of times it felt like et tu brute in the process. We're working with a number of tribal organizations around the country who want to create workforce development, like a guild type of a thing. And I've been trying to do that with my companies for, over 25 years. And I've got one apprentice who's been with me for 6 years down in Texas, and I've had 45 different workers, and so when you try to create workforce development or a guild, it's all great, but you need to have projects for those people to work on so you can keep the guild together, or the people in the guild together. I mean, the reason the old Granges work so great is because they were all farmers that were trying to get together at the Grange Hall to communicate on, create a cooperative on to sell their product. Well, when you start to go down a guild system, that's assuming already in the guilds that worked in the past that those projects were going to be there in the future. Today, we don't have enough natural building projects to literally develop the workforce because the projects don't exist, and so that's kind of that catch-22 of it, is we can all get together and try to do great stuff, but if we're not getting together to try to do great stuff so we can get more projects together, so we can really build the company, build the workforce inside of it, it ends up being in a stagnant space where natural building has been in since I got into it, and that's what we deal with the hemp and the hemp lime building that we're doing. And we got a lot of those hempsters out there that are like, we need to make workforce development, we need to do education. And I've been like, hey, you guys are a natural building system to start with. And second, this is all fine and dandy, but we need projects, because without projects, you can't create growth inside of it. And so that's the biggest hurdle. If you could come together as a guild, pull in the finances behind people who have the finances and the banks to say, hey, we know this is the future. We want to be at the beginning of it. Will you help finance us for 15, 20, 30, 50 houses? And we eventually want to build 1,000 houses over the next 25 to 50 years, because we want to create a guild system and we want to teach the younger people how to use these natural materials. And we're smart enough now to know that if we're going to do that and create job security and continue the education, that we need the projects. And so it's one thing in my almost 30 years of being a natural builder, I have never had enough projects to keep me and 8, 10 people busy. It's one project 250 miles over here. Okay, now we're off for a couple of months and they wander, and then we got another project another 200 miles away. Adam, when we were building, that was our biggest thing, is getting enough projects down in Southwest Colorado so that we could keep a cohesive team together. And so we all want to get the cart out there and we want to get going with it, and it's on the hill, but we need to put the Clydesdales in front of it to pull us up the other hill and to slow us as we're going down. So projects, 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 projects. Support. Yeah, and we'll build all that support, with the project.
So I've never been part of a guild, but I think that's a great idea. Anytime you can get a bunch of people together and be organized, you can make things happen. It's much easier than, a couple of people opposed to 1,000 people together, approaching whoever you're approaching, the government officials, about changing rules. So it's about really organizing. That's really what the guild is. It's just being organized together. And I think that'd be great. I'd love to join a guild that didn't have anything to do with video games. Also, I have a green tarp. My wife, Mrs. Aircrete's there. We have 2 airforms that I sewed for this event in case anyone was interested. So we have 2 16-foot diameter airforms made of Tyvek that you could purchase, and in 2 weeks you can have yourself a dome.
You get a dome, you get a dome, you get a dome. Oh man, you're gonna make me show my nerdy side talking about guilds, but I'll behave.
Okay, keep it short, Eric. We got 1 more minute.
I know. I think engineers are important for the guild. I think that support from the job standpoint and getting big budgets to do developments, Tim, is definitely job security in a guild from the standpoint of the laborer's standpoint. But if I think about the people who need the Ghostbusters they can call when they say, I want to do this natural built house, but there's no one, you go to Google, you look it up, and it's like the Natural Builders Guild with engineered spec houses, and basically resources that you need in order to get yours passed. And that to me would be a really great thing if a guild could support builders because really at the end of the day what we all just said here was like, yeah, but you got to know the right person to stamp it. And it's like, if it really is down to just generating the documents or knowing the right person to stamp it in certain situations, then it would be a really great resource to be able to have an organized effort that was supported in which there were affordable, maybe even permaculture sliding scale per job size engineers and specialists that could at least put into the pool of knowledge for those builders who are interested, whether you're a professional builder or an owner builder. Right now, I can't say that there's any one company that I would look to that I'd say like, hey, give me the engineer stamp for this, or do you have an engineer? Because you'll need many different people for all of those positions for each situation, and that gilding up could benefit the ease of getting towards your permit, I think. Just for permitting alone, and then like you said, job security and gilding up for the purposes of the labor force, of course, but getting projects permitted is the obstacle to having projects.
All right, guys, thank you.
One last thing on guilds, just
Okay.
to remember one thing, okay, is that when you're making a natural building guild, natural builders are automatically incredibly independent and stubborn people. So when you go into it, just understand that all of you have that in common and try to make that your common ground, because that's one thing that you're going to have.
As with most builders too. So. All right, we got 5 minutes for Q&A.
5 minutes.
You tell me, boss.
We can go over because next week, you never pushed, the county never pushed things down our throat. We worked with them. Okay. Lisa just wanted to make the point that our county and commissioners were really trying to work with us once we pointed out the problems or the concerns. And, you know, it's always an ongoing process, so. So we're going to take some questions, and our next speaker, Lloyd, is up on the stage, but we don't want to cut him short either. So if by a show of hands, we've got a question here, okay, I'll come to you second. And again, if you want to just say your name and the question, that would be great.
My name is Eric. Not so much a question, but there is the Natural Building Alliance, formerly the Colorado Straw Bale Association.
Yeah, and it's really great to see Building Alliance kind of stepped into the Colorado Straw Bale Association. The Southwest Natural Builders Guild that I was involved with at the turn of the century, when it went under, its finances went into COSBA, and then now to see COSBA go into the Natural Building Alliance through the Intermountain West. They put on a great conference every year, and it's a good way to network. And so really the networking is the key. And that's what you get to when you start networking and you start to know people. When you come to different things like this, you're like, oh, I've heard about you, or I've heard about you. I went to a hemp building workshop that Will Stanwyck was teaching in Pennsylvania, you know, and so my crew was like, Tim, what are you doing? You're paying to go to a Hempcrete and you've built 3 houses and got awards. And I was like, I want to talk to Will Stanwyck. You know, I want to go talk to this person. And it's that networking that you get at those different types of professional events and do-it-yourself events where, you know, to go from Central Texas to Eastern Pennsylvania and pay to do a class and all of that expense as a, you know, one of the leading hempcrete builders in the United States. To a lot of people, it looks like, oh, that's just insanity. But for me, it was about, I need to network with different people. And I also knew there was going to be about 4 other Lime guys there, and we never get a chance to talk to each other. And so it's that type of thing. Next question out there in question land.
My name is Tristan, and I know there's a couple people in this town who have studied land patents and private, living privately essentially. I feel like as a guild member, someone who could contract and work with those people, you could come together in a resource to get approval on things without having to jump through all the red tape of our modern society and how we live and those means. Aside from, you still having simple principle morals on health and safety as well. I feel like maybe that would be a route to go, especially for educational purposes. With land patents, you can't sell the land, but if you build on it and you help others educationally, living through it and working on it and also sustaining it, I feel like that could contribute to the educational purposes of it.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I feel like a guild could be very helpful just as a good community, county, southwestern Colorado network of who to work with, of who can I contact about hempcrete, or who can I talk to about clay plasters, besides Tim.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to be the broken record.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, my name is Wade. I live here. I live in Baca, and 15 years ago, this square footage issue came up for me, living in a smaller, unfinished structure, but recognizing, hey, I don't need 900 feet. So the process was to put it on the ballot, and the problem that we've had in the Baca with changing the covenants, okay, oops, sorry, is that we rarely achieve a quorum in our voting process. So there is a way to do this, reduce the square footage, but in order to get 51% of our membership to vote for something, we're talking about a number of people. We don't ever get that many people in an election. So the process exists, but I guess I would say the method of reaching out to 3,500 members and that will actually vote, send in their votes. We're talking about typically a vote of 3,500 members. We will get about, I haven't checked it recently, 1,200 votes, okay? So I put forth a proposal that got on the ballot, this was like 15 years ago, to reduce the square footage to 700. Well, it passed by a 2-to-1 margin, but guess what? No quorum. So that's what I wanted to share, is that there is a process, but how do we get people involved enough? And this is where I think maybe a guild could be a way to get the word out there. Thank you.
There was, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Mike, and I know we're talking a lot about natural building and everything is amazing. For somebody who has like a 75-year-old home, when it comes to natural remodeling, is that a thing? Do the concepts still apply? Are there people that are interested in that kind of work, or what can you say about remodeling in a natural way?
Yeah, stick clay plasters on your drywall. Take off the wallpaper. It's a low-hanging fruit. Super easy to do. American Clay's got great videos on how to do it yourself. Their product is great. Got a number of different finishes. You got a number of different pigments that you can choose from. And if you want to know more about just how to do plaster work as a remodel to get you moving in that direction, join us tomorrow at noon down at the building demo site, because that's what we're going to be demonstrating down there. Different plasters, how to make them from scratch, or how to use a bagged product. And but when it gets to doing a remodel, there's a reason contractors don't do remodels on a hard bid, because you never know what you're going to get into. So if you're talking about taking the drywall out and there's no insulation, there's hemp block systems that you can put in there, and then go with plasters off of that. If you're just talking about coming into a house that's structurally okay and it's got decent insulation in it, but you want to make it more natural, there's nothing easier than putting clay plasters in, American Clay's plaster with their binder, over top of any wall surf system with with latex paint. I mean, you can't get, I mean, you're literally picking the apple up off the ground after it fell off the tree.
Any other questions?
My name is Angela, and I'm a mechanical engineer and project manager, and I've seen structural failures in various industries, and I've also worked on projects where there wasn't a respect for structural from the contractors, and I had some major concerns. And I just want to say respect for structural engineers. I'm not one, but goes a really long way. And if you want more structural engineers involved in the industry, just how we talk about them and what they do, I found has gone a long way on my projects. My question is, as far as project management, if you were to do a guild or on some of your like larger projects, or like what you were saying where someone's doing a development, what has been the role of project management in the industry, and where do you see that going in the future?
Well, you have different paradigms that you come from in terms of project management. The owner-builder paradigm is one, and then you have someone who's maybe in the middle with some construction experience. Everything from someone who knows nothing and never picked up a circular saw. You know, my friend who had no money built his house, but he chose a material that was so structurally massive and the oversized vigas that there really is no concern in terms of structure. Now, that's not me saying to you that I've never done jobs where I literally legally cannot even tell you what we did, because I have. And there are houses that are horrendous in terms of what you find behind the walls when you do renovations and things like that. I respect engineers, and their place in project management is something that this conversation is bringing up as a main narrative and a block for people, because it's about having the access to those engineers and those engineers understanding what we already have been researching as a kind of disorganized collective globally, permaculturally, for many years. But there are globally organizations that can get you this information. It exists out there. And if there are people who are serious who want project management specifically in terms of like support, or even just to meet with a consultant or to join a class that's about project management, I've started to shift my awareness in that direction, because I definitely see that that's a blind spot.
But I think also, as a project manager, I went to school for project management, and I've done a lot of, I'm just new to natural building, but I think from a guild standpoint, you need to have project managers to help manage the more complex projects, but also to bring in the structural engineers when needed, because the last thing that we want in natural building is to see somebody inexperienced fail and make the whole build look bad, or the whole community look bad. And so that's one thing for the guild that we're trying to cultivate, is protect what we're trying to do out here, but by protecting, we have to make sure that we're building it correctly, because we don't want to see failures. You know, it's common to see cracks in walls a little bit, but within 3 to 5 years, no. You know, we want structural, solid buildings.
Yeah, the project management aspect of it, when you get into natural building, and this is one of the scary parts going from conventional to a true natural building system, is that how we set up the process of what gets done at what time is different. It's not A, B, C, D, E, and you know, it might be A and then D and then B and then C. And like when we do projects, the very last thing that we do in our houses is our finished clay plaster wall finish. Normally that would be done in the paint process, you know, and so it's like, no, we're gonna do that later. Finish everything in the house. Don't put the toilets in, you know, but finish out all your trim and everything, and your base is done. And then we come in with the clay plasters and we just treat it like a remodel, because now we don't have to worry about the cabinet guy beating up our clay walls. We don't have to worry about the electrician when he's pulling wires, messing up every single outlet box. When you have to come back and patch every single outlet box, you will finally just say, no, we're not coming till it's all done, you know? And so those are the type of things, if you're going to go into project management in natural building, it really is beneficial to seek out somebody who has been a builder in natural builder and then bring them on as a consultant for your first couple of projects so you can see how the different process, so then it's easier to communicate to a conventional contractor. We've dealt with that a lot on a number of projects, and we finally got to the point again. I was at that point in Colorado with my company, to the point that I was after a couple of projects in Texas, to where it was so frustrating coming in and then not being ready for us, or having us come at the wrong time, that we just said, to heck with it. We're going back to doing everything from the ground up, you know, and then we've got complete control of what gets done. And it wasn't because we wanted to do that. It was because our life was easier when we just stepped up to bat and took it on. You don't want to pay the construction liability insurance for that, that's for sure. That's not fun, right, Adam?
We've got time for one more question. And
Hey guys, my name's Curtis Scheib. Some of y'all know me. And I was a natural builder from the 90s till I had to retire last year. And my concern or question is I've seen this industry, you know, kind of going up, but there's lots of dips and valleys in the road. And, you know, I had started doing solar full time right before the housing crash. The housing crash came, and I know everybody shut down, but like straw bale and all these natural building techniques that were gaining so much momentum just stopped. And it seems like the associations, the Straw Bale Association, which I was a big part of for many years, and everything kind of just kind of died away. And if natural building's really going to go mainstream, we need more resilience in the fact when we have these downturns that we don't lose all this knowledge, you know, because I don't know how many guys work for me had to go work somewhere else, and, you know, they want to do natural building like you were talking workforce. I've trained hundreds of people and ran dozens of workshops. And what do you think is the answer? Is it a guild? The association didn't hold strong when this happened. And so, you know, my question to you, I'm out of it. I just finished my last straw bale I'll probably ever do. And, you know, because of health reasons, I'm just going to go off and have some fun. But I love to see what the young guys, and how do we get the youngins in this, you know? I mean, you guys are mostly my age, except for maybe the guy on the right there. We need youngins to come in. And in the 2000s and the 90s, it was roaring. And that's it. That's all I got. I think it's clear that, you know, how can we weather and build this community?
Yeah, we touched on it earlier. It got greenwashed, man. It got greenwashed. Natural building got greenwashed is what happened. Yeah, greenwashed, you know. Greenwashed, okay, we're going to make a green building, and now we're going to go from 2x4 framing to 2x6 framing, and to meet energy codes and to become green and energy efficient, we're going to throw 2 inches of foam on the outside, and we're going to do the same old nasty stucco cement EFA system on the outside, and we're going to go to a lower VOC paint for our finish on the inside, and we're going to put energy efficient appliances in it. We're going to put this really cool energy efficient boiler in it, and HRV and stuff like that. And so what happened, literally what happened, because we did not define ourselves as natural builders back then, we got greenwashed and wiped us out. I mean, of the 23 natural builders that were in the Southwest Natural Builders Guild, I'm one of the only ones left still building naturally, okay? So I think it gets back to what that architect, though, that said, Gail Borst, she goes, I decided that I needed to step up from green building to step up to be a natural builder. And so what we're really trying to do out there is to get the architects, the designers, the engineers to say, hey, how do we step up to be more natural? How do we move from green as a platform up to natural building? Now, that being said, in every single architecture school in the United States, there is not a 3-credit course in that school that the architects or designers have to take that talks specifically for a semester on natural building. 0. And I've talked with all of them and the fresh graduates. It wasn't even offered. Okay, so that is where it really needs to start, because you go to college to get an education and make a career, and you go to college so you can learn, and then you're going to reproduce it. It's just like the workshops. I'm really conscious of trying to make sure I'm showing the right way to do it during a workshop so that it is being reproduced correctly, you know. And so that's the hurdle. There are a number of organizations out there that are trying to do AIA continuing education credits and to get into the universities. Even for me, with 2 Bachelor of Arts degrees, the universities will not let me in the door. You know, they want a master's degree. And what I'm talking about goes against everything that they have built their career in their higher education system around. And so it's really the shortfall of the higher education system that we have in the United States. And it doesn't apply to building. It applies to our pharmaceutical industry. It applies across the board. Okay, and so that's the hurdle, you know. And how do we take down that hurdle, or how do we build a pyramid so we can get over that hurdle? I will say in the ship of it all, that they have let us into the front door of the captain's pit, or the captain's steering wheel, you know, where they make all decisions. And now it's up to them to break our foot off, because we're literally in the control center and people are starting to wake up. So that's the positive note I will. There's hope. There is hope.
Can I ask something? Yeah. I just want to give respect to Curtis real quick, because then he asked the question, where'd he go? Is Curtis? Hey, I just wanted to say thank you. Curtis and I met a couple years ago, and he is a builder in the community who cares obviously a lot about this, and we're going to make you proud, you know. There's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. There's decentralized systems now that don't need to go through the bureaucracies and the education paradigms. That's why Aircrete Harry and I are on YouTube, is so that anybody can learn. Everybody does YouTube Academy nowadays. I'm just being frank. It is a positive thing, because anything that you want to learn, I've now painstakingly videotaped and put out for free online so that you can learn about hempcrete, cob, rammed earth tires, earth bags, scoria bags, ferro cement, aircrete, pumice-crete, papercrete. I mean, the list goes on. And now it's starting to get into the real serious shit, like project planning, like being the code, inspections, engineers. It's going up. We're carrying the torch forward. And I just wanted to say respect to you. Please, a round of applause for another builder who is respectfully putting in his... I hope you have a lot of fun at this fair, Curtis, and I look forward to seeing you later. And thank you so much, Brett, once again for hosting and moderating the panel.
All right, guys, appreciate your time here today, and we'll pass it back over to Kim.
So stick around, you guys. Let's give a hand for our natural building panel. And Lloyd Kahn, who is on the panel, is our next speaker. We're going to give him a few minutes break so you can catch a little food and refreshment, and then please stick around for his talk today, Adventures in Building. And he'll be coming on in just a few minutes. Thank you.